Okay, so you sent over some really interesting stuff on robots
Yeah.
working with humans, and I think we should just dive right in.
Let's do it.
So the big thing is robotic system integration.
Right.
And it seems like cobots, collaborative robots, are like at the heart of this.
Yeah, that seems to be a recurring theme. I mean, at least from the stuff that you sent over.
Right, and we're seeing a lot of different approaches
Absolutely.
in these sources.
Yeah.
But I think it'd be good to start with like just a super high level view. I
Sure.
mean, we're talking about how robots and automated systems are changing the workplace
Right.
and how humans are working right alongside them.
Right. It's not just about robots taking over jobs. It's,
Yeah.
as you said,
Yeah.
it's that collaboration. It's that human robot interaction that's really interesting.
Yeah, it's not the robots from the 80s movies, you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
So what are some of the key types of robotic systems that you're seeing?
Well, we talked about the cobots, the collaborative robots, but
Yeah.
there's also things like Cartesian robotic systems.
Okay. And those are different? How?
So those are less about having like an arm that moves around like a human arm and more about moving things in a very precise linear fashion.
Oh, okay.
So think about like a CNC machine
Gotcha.
or a 3D printer.
Okay.
Very precise movements, but in a very controlled, straight line kind of way.
Right. So they each have their own strengths
Exactly.
and use cases.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of all of this stuff is that it's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some specifics.
Yes.
You sent over some information on the Queso 7-axis cobot.
Yeah.
And that one stood out to me because of the 7 axes.
Right, and that seventh axis is a big deal. It gives it so much more flexibility than a typical 6-axis robot.
Mm-hmm.
It can reach around obstacles, get into tighter spaces without having to reposition the whole arm,
Yep.
which is super important for like, automotive manufacturing or other complex assembly tasks.
And you're saying that that extra axis lets it handle heavier objects too.
Yeah, exactly. It can lift up to 18 kilograms, which is almost 40 pounds.
Wow.
And it has a reach of up to 1,800 millimeters, so
Yeah.
almost 6 feet.
So it's a real workhorse.
It
Now the JK 6-axis cobot, that's a bit different, isn't it?
It is. So the JK, it's got a smaller reach, and it's not quite as strong in terms of payload. It can lift up to 40 kilograms, though.
Wow, still a lot.
Yeah, still a lot, but it's much lighter and more compact.
So it's more about precision.
Yeah, it's designed for applications where space is limited,
Yeah.
where you need something that can work really closely with humans without taking up a ton of room.
Makes sense now. I also wanted to talk about the Bosch Rexroth Cartesian robotic systems.
Oh yeah, those are really interesting.
Yeah, those seem like a completely different animal.
They're not cobots in the traditional sense.
Mm.
They're not designed to work in the same space as humans necessarily, but they're incredibly versatile.
Mm.
You can use them for everything from machine guarding to building workstations to creating custom automation solutions for all sorts of tasks like drilling, pick, and place, you name it.
And they're modular, right?
Yes, which is super cool. It means you can build them to fit your exact needs.
Mhm.
Kind of like Lego.
Right. I get it. So you can tailor them to the specific task.
Exactly. And Bosch Rexroth, they have this control software called Citral LX,
Mm-hmm.
which makes it really easy to integrate these systems with other equipment and, control the whole thing from a central location.
So it sounds like with all of these systems, whether we're talking cobots or these Cartesian systems, the goal is really to improve the workplace.
Absolutely. It's about making things safer, more efficient, and ultimately, improving the lives of the workers.
Yeah, and that's a really important point. I think a lot of people hear robots in the workplace and they immediately think job losses, but it's not that simple.
No, it's not. It's about augmenting human capabilities,
Mhm.
not replacing them. Yeah, these robots can take on the dangerous, repetitive, or just plain boring tasks, freeing up humans to focus on things that require creativity, problem solving, and, that human touch.
So it's more like a partnership.
Exactly.
Now, looking at these sources, what would you say are the key benefits of this kind of robotic system integration?
Well, I think the biggest one is safety. Robots can work in hazardous environments or perform tasks that would be risky for humans, like lifting heavy objects or working with dangerous chemicals.
Makes sense.
And then there's the increased precision. And productivity robots can work tirelessly without getting tired or making mistakes, which leads to higher quality products and, ultimately lower costs.
And I would imagine that the flexibility of these systems is also a huge advantage.
It is definitely, the fact that you can reprogram and reposition them so easily means that they can adapt to changing needs and new tasks without having to invest in a whole new system.
And speaking of adaptability, that's where the end-of-arm tooling comes in.
Right, those are the tools that attach to the end of the robot arm and allow it to perform specific tasks.
Like grippers and welders and all sorts of things.
Exactly, and what's really cool is that these tools are being designed with safety in mind.
Yeah.
They have features like rounded edges and sensors that prevent them from gripping too hard. So even if there's a power outage or a malfunction, the worker's still safe.
And it's not just about the technology itself, right? There's also the whole process of implementing these systems.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Your sources mentioned risk assessment consulting, which is really important. You need to make sure that you're integrating these robots in a way that's safe for everyone involved and that you're properly training your workforce to work alongside them.
Right. So it's a holistic approach.
It is. It has to be.
So when we look at the big picture here, it seems like this whole robotic system integration trend is really about creating a more collaborative and efficient workplace.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. It's about humans and robots working together to achieve more than they could on their own.
And it's not just about manufacturing, right?
No, not at all. We're seeing these robots being used in healthcare, agriculture, logistics, all sorts of industries.
It's really fascinating to think about how this is all going to evolve, how these advancements will continue to shape the way we work and live in the future.
Yeah, it's exciting and a little bit scary all at the same time.
It is, but it's definitely something that we need to be paying attention to.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been a really interesting deep dive.
Thanks. I enjoyed it.
I've learned a lot, and I think our listeners will too.
I hope so.
And who knows, maybe someday we'll all have robot coworkers.
Maybe sooner than we think.
Thanks for joining me.
My pleasure.